Welcome to the Footy with Fletch podcast. This is episode 19 of the podcast. And today's guest is Xavier Ellis. He played 120 AFL games from 2007 to 2013 at Hawthorn and from 2014 to 2016 at West Coast. He is a one-time Premiership player. Thank you for joining me today, Xavier. How are you? It's great to have you.
I'm going well, mate. Just over here in West Australia, and thanks very much for pushing it back an hour for me. So I've got the kids and the wife on the road. They're heading down south for 5 nights. So things are good.
It will be great to talk to you today. Of course, you grew up in Lakes Entrance and played with the Gippsland Power in the TAC Cup. What was it like for you to grow up in Lakes Entrance and play your football in a regional area of Victoria?
You don't realise how difficult it probably was until now. I'm a bit older and living in the city with my own kids, thinking, gee whiz, the sacrifices and commitments my parents made living in a rural area to get your son drafted. It was astonishing. So Gippsland, for those that don't know, Gippsland spans across about 7 hours of territory, I suppose, in terms of driving. Not far out of Melbourne, then all the way through the New South Wales border on the coast. So I was from near Lakes Entrance. I always just say Lakes Entrance because it's the sort of town that a lot of people have heard. The next town on is Lake Tyers Beach, so that's where I'm from originally. But to get to training, for example, when I was at home, they trained in Morwell, which is about 2.5 hours away. So mum and dad would have to get in the car, drive it 2.5 hours, train, get back in the car, 2.5 hours home, and I've got 3 other siblings. So, dinners had to be organised, and then, of course, the games. We could be playing Bendigo, we could be playing in Ballarat, we could be playing in the Murray Bush Ranger region. So, travel was for games, 5 hours, 6 hours. That was for every sport. So I used to love playing cricket, love playing basketball. So, the commitment of the parents was phenomenal, and you wish you could repay them with more thank yous and a kindness than what you probably did, because now you realise that, Bruce, if my 2 boys wanted to get up at 4 a.m. and go to a footy game 5 hours away, I'd do it, but I wouldn't be doing it every weekend.
Yeah, it sounds like your parents have been a great influence for you. Would you say that they've been the biggest influence on your AFL career?
So not so much for the 11 years I played AFL. They took a back seat. Well and truly. Mum's a physio, so I missed 4 years of footy with injury. So she had a few little things that she might want to see through out there to try. But in terms of AFL, they really just took a back seat. They didn't even want tickets for most of the time. They got their home tickets. So, but in terms of getting to the AFL, I went to boarding school as well. So, they sacrificed a lot financially to get me to boarding school as well. Sacrificed a lot of time. And probably when you think about it, sacrificed a lot of quality time with my other siblings just because of the time that was needed to, rip around the state to play a game of footy. But they loved it. They absolutely loved it. So they didn't miss a game ever. So as much as it was probably a hassle and a time commitment, I think they loved it.
Yeah, it's great to have supportive parents. As a child, which football team did you grow up supporting? Which players did you idolise?
I was an absolute mad Essendon supporter. Grew up Essendon, James Hird, Michael Long, Darren Buick. But anything James Hird did was just amazing. I absolutely loved James Hird. I'd go to bed in a number 5 footy jumper, sleep in Essendon boxer shorts. I was a full Essendon nuffy. It was crazy how in love I was with footy as a youngster. But as you get a bit older, so Gippsland Power, for example, Jared Duffhead was a year above me, so we went to Hawthorn. Andrew McFolder was 2 years above me, he went to St Kilda. Dean Cole went to Richmond. So you start to follow their careers more than your own team, I guess. I can see a lot of Carlton in your room there, Fletch. So I don't need to ask you who you support, mate. You're a mad blue bagger by the looks of it. But, and then obviously when you get drafted, you pass your alliances pretty quickly, especially if you end up at Hawthorn and you're supporting Essendon. They disappear pretty quickly.
Yeah, you mentioned Jared Ruffhead. I'm currently reading his autobiography, and it's really interesting to see what the Hawthorne Football Club was like when Alistair Clarkson arrived. So you, of course, won the Premiership in 2008. What was that like for you and for the team?
Yeah, well, you mentioned, when Clarko arrived. I mean, Clarko really made some tough decisions. Yeah, when he first started, he wanted kids, and he got kids. I think there was a dispute at the draft table over whether they should take Ruffhead or Tambling, I think it was. A real dispute over that. And Clarko got what Clarko wanted. He wanted two key position forwards, Franklin and Ruffhead, and there's your dynasty done in 2 picks. Anyway, it was an amazing time. We were so young. Like, when you think about how young we were, I was 20, Cyril 19, Brent Renouf 19, Birchall 20, Lewis, Franklin, Ruffhead 21, Clinton Young 21-ish. So it's probably about 10 players, 22 and under. So we were young, which probably made us, which probably helped us because we were absolutely full of bullshit. And we weren't scared of too many people. And Geelong, as good as they were back then in 2008, they could have been arguably the best team of all time if they went on to win that flag, having only dropped one game prior to it. But we had a lot of self-confidence, which I don't know. Self-confidence gets you so far. It can work in your favour. You can look like an absolute fool, but it works in our favour.
You definitely did get to play alongside some real superstars of Hawthorn. You mentioned Jordan Lewis, Sam Mitchell, Grant Birchall, Lance Franklin, Cyril Rioli, Luke Hodge, Jared Ruffhead, just to name a few players. What was it like to play with some of those fantastic footballers?
I still remember draft night. I still remember like it was yesterday. I had a text message from Sam Mitchell inviting me to go for a beer at the Hawthorn Hotel in Hawthorn, essentially. And it wasn't the fact that Sam Mitchell had reached out. It was the fact he had my phone number. I could not believe, going up 5 hours from Melbourne, that an AFL player had my mobile phone number and texted me. I used to love football. As I said, I was addicted to it. I never got to meet any really as a kid. Paul Salmon once at the Meektung Hotel was on a holiday and I met him there as a junior and that was it. So, just getting drafted and meeting those players who at that time had no Hall of Fame direction. They were just good players. And now the ones you named, they're probably all going to end up in the Hall of Fame. So, some clubs go through eras without having a generational player. I look at Carlton and you'd put Juddy in there for sure. But that's probably about it, to be honest with you, in terms of a generational player. You got, Hodgie with a couple of Norm Smiths. You've got Coleman medalists. I'd probably say too, sorry. I should add, but you got, Colemans and Brownlows and bloody Norm Smiths and best and fairest in Premiership years and 4-time Premiership players. And some players don't get the opportunity to play with anyone of that quality. And I was lucky enough to have 6 or 7.
You definitely were very lucky. You mentioned Sam Mitchell, and you also played alongside Stuart Dew. Both of those guys have gone on to become AFL senior coaches. What has that been like for you to see them develop outside of their playing career, but in their coaching journey as well?
Yeah, it's a funny one because at Hawthorn, any assistant coach that walked through the door became a senior coach. Fagan, Hardwick, Simpson, Beveridge, there's probably a couple, Brennan Bolton, there's a heap more. So you knew people at the footy club were going to go on and become coaches, and Sam Mitchell was one of those. Even though he was playing, I was dead certain he was going to be an AFL coach, and he'll be a brilliant one at that. Stuart Dew, on the other hand, I didn't know he was going. I didn't feel as though he was going to go into coaching. Stuart Dew could do anything. He's such a good guy, and anyone with that skill level and calmness. Is what, the calmness nature of Stewie Dew. He saw in that 2008 grand final where he just wandered forward, kicked a few, set up a few, and then wandered off the ground like nothing had happened. He's massive on big stages. So I think it's great that they're playing. I've sent Sam a few tests. I do Dewey as well, but, even with Sam being a little bit involved with the draft process at Hawthorn, he reached out a little bit just to see what I knew about the WA kids over here. I watched a lot of waffle footy, so Mitch is no deal. He'll be a spectacular coach, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Hawthorn do this year.
It will be great to see what Sam Mitchell does for the Hawthorne Football Club. Of course, you made your debut in round 1, 2007 against the Brisbane Lions at the Gabba. What do you remember from your first match?
We got absolutely pumped, Fletch. Absolutely pumped. I remember it was the only time ever Clarkson, we had a really good pre-season, but the game was so young. I went to Brisbane and Glasgow, played at the Gabba, a night game. Jason Dunstan did my jump presentation for the game. I remember, for those that don't know, when you play a game of footy, the coach has the magnet board, has, for example, the Hawthorn v Geelong, the magnets go Rioli, Enright, Franklin, Starlet. So your opponent's above you, all over the board. Hawkins, Pro. This game was the only time ever Alistair Clarkson didn't put the opposition's names on the board and said, don't worry about the opposition. Don't worry about them. This is about us tonight. We will trump these guys tonight. It's about us. So sure enough, we got absolutely pumped, and the next week the magnets were back up on the board. So that's all I remember is getting pumped. I played on the grass, played deep in the back line, played really deep in the back line. So, it was good fun, but we got rolled.
It must have been a memorable moment for you. Of course, a lot of people dream to play AFL football. And you mentioned McGrath. What was it like to play on someone like McGrath?
It's tricky because I was skinny. I'm not skinny now, but I can promise you that. But I was skinny. I was skinny back then, and I was a midfielder essentially. So playing in the back line was really foreign. But Jonathan Brown was standing next to us, and I was standing out in front of McGrath and sort of zoning space a little bit. And I remember Jonathan Brown go, "Oi, dude, I wouldn't stand there." So I packed up and moved away because I was good frightened of Brownie. But, just little things like that you pick up along the way, which, it's good memories. Jonathan Brown threatening to kill me on my first game was something I'll remember forever.
It definitely does sound like an interesting first game. Of course, the 2008 season was probably your best season in your career. You played 23 matches, averaging 20 disposals. What was that season like for you?
Yeah, it was good. It was pretty injury-free, which I wasn't fortunate enough to have too many of those years. I did get a pretty good injury at the end of the year, so I was crawling to the finish line, but I started the season a little bit slow. I remember that. I was still finding a bit of the footy. I was having games, low to mid-20s and just roaming around on a wing, but I remember Clarko pulled me and another player in with Hodge and Mitchell, and they gave me a bit of a dressing down, and the other player, just to toughen up a little bit, and maybe if you go as hard as you can at the footy, there's no way you'll leave the team. And I thought I was playing okay out in the wing, but that was just a tiny little kick up the arse I needed. It changed my role a little bit, actually. So then I went pretty hard one day on Adam Good, tagged him, and did okay on him. And then the role changed a little bit. Then Clarko started putting me inside the contest, starting in the centre. And if I needed to do a bit of a run with role, I could do that if it was a taller midfielder like a Goods or a Goddard or something like that. So it was a really good year. And that's what I loved about Clarko. He put the acid on me, gave me a base, but then saw me respond and then gave me opportunity. So, that's what I remember from 08 was just thinking I was going okay, getting a foot up my ass, and then just believing a little bit more in myself. I think the last third or half of the season, after we played Sydney and I tagged Goodsy, was a pretty good year for me. I think it reflected the second half in the best and fairest, which was pleasing, and then obviously to win the grand final. I missed the first final with an injury that I was saying I was leaving to the finish line, but it's funny what doctors can do, and away we went.
Yeah, the doctors are some really important football in a football team. Of course, in the grand final, Luke Hodge went on to win the Norm Smith medal. Do you think that you were robbed of the Norm Smith medal in that match?
Oh, well, self-less. I had more kicks, more marks, more goals, more clearances, more inside 50s, more metres gained, and I was getting tagged by Cameron Ling as well. No, I made that up. No, Hodge was unbelievable, mate. I just play up to it like an absolute fool. So I hope people don't think I am serious when I start to won the Norm Smith. But I do like taking the mickey out of Hodgie and telling him I was the Norm Smith. But more, I was just proud that my career at Hawthorn was unfortunately not what I wanted it to be. I wanted to be far more successful personally, but and they used a high draft pick on me. But once the I 10 rest these years on that grand final day when it was hot, and backwards to the wall with two people injured before half time that when the whips were cracking, I joined in.
Yeah, you mentioned that grand final was hot. What was it like to play in a grand final, given that it was a really hot day in Melbourne?
Yeah, we were absolutely cooked, mate, at half time. I told someone a story the other day. At half time, we were hanging on. I felt like we were fitter. I thought we were much fitter than Geelong. I thought we were better runners. But they obviously had the star players. Their midfielders, Bartel, Ablett, Corey. Oh, geez, I probably missed Brownlow. But Ling, they're all in there. Stevie Jake. They had the stars, but we had the engine. And I remember at half time thinking we were cooked, we were hanging on and we might have been done. But our fitness coach came back in and said, they're in the freezer. They're in the freezer. So, we didn't need to get in the freezer. We were going okay. So that was a memory of the heat.
Of course, you went on to win the grand final in 2008. What were the grand final celebration stories from that grand final premiership win?
I remember we were 20, and I don't think we realised I didn't realise what we'd done. I thought, we're 20, we've won a flag, probably going to win another 7 of these. That was pretty easy. So I took it for granted, to be honest with you. I reflect on it now, and I wish I hadn't, because I ended up missing 2013, losing 2012, losing 2015. So I could rewind it and go, miss 2008, lose 2012, lose 2013, and win 2015. I would have appreciated it so much more, mate. But that's not how the cookies crumbled. And I took it for granted. I remember celebrating. We went to Hong Kong for a week as well. So we partied for a week and then went to Hong Kong for a week. So after 14 days, stick a fork in me, mate, I was absolutely done.
Now, it definitely would have been a great moment for you in your career. You were coached by Alistair Clarkson at Hawthorn, of course, and Adam Simpson at West Coast. Adam Simpson was an assistant coach at your time at the Hawks. Can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with these two fantastic coaches?
I think Clarko, a brilliant man, an honest guy. And people go, honest guy. He said he's going to coach Hawthorn, but if you're inside his cocoon, and he speaks of being inside the cocoon as a team, you're with us or against us. And if you're with him, he'd do anything for you. A wise man, caring. One night I remember him ringing me to go for a walk on the beach just to check in how I was going. I missed a lot of football and I was just flooded back. He didn't want to go to bed that night before he made sure I was fine. So, the type of person is caring, smart, intelligent, footy genius. It's certainly not the last we hear of Alistair Clarkson. Whereas Timo, he's like one of the players in a sense that you can go over and talk to him as though he's on your level. Clarko always had a bit of, here comes the coach sort of stuff. Whereas Timo, I never felt that. He was, and I suppose that, he played 310 games, a little bit less for North, captain, Premiership, North Melbourne back then, the Friday night specialist. So, and he was always on the level, caring again. They all care. And a Premiership coach in his own right, from nowhere really. So similar journey to Clarko when they won their first flag, no expectations, and just really clever footy and you can have game plans, you can have fitness, you can have sports science. But you can't add a bit of sprinkle of chemistry and a sprinkle of mateship. That's just something that's formed, and Timo's brilliant at that.
They definitely do sound like two amazing men to be able to share your football journey with. Now, of course, you left the Hawthorne Football Club at the end of 2013 after 86 games and 28 goals. What was the reason behind your departure from the Hawthorne Football Club?
Yeah, I just needed a fresh start. I couldn't get on the park. I had a leg injury that was frustrating. I probably changed into a person that I didn't want to be, essentially. And you don't know that. You feel like you're letting down people who are paying you. Never that I was a highly paid player ever, but you're not doing your job. And eventually it plays on your mind, and you feel like you're letting Parko down, and you feel like you're letting Hodgie down, and you feel like you're letting everyone down. And then you miss 2 years of footy, and you're sort of unthought of again. Before you know it, new players are in, you're at the back of the pecking order. I played the 2012 grand final and hurt my leg in that game, and I had an injection put in it, and I just missed 12 months after. After that, I just couldn't get my leg right. So just needed a fresh start, and there was no animosity from the Hawthorne Football Club. There was one rule when I said I was leaving. I just had to tell them before they heard it in the media. So, and they wanted to announce it. That was it. So, West Coast was a great choice. I didn't know how big West Coast were over the East Coast. Talk about a big football club, Christ almighty. So West Coast was fantastic to get my foot in there and chisel away for 3 years. Again, my leg didn't give me much joy, but it was a part of my life that I missed three premierships, but I met some mates that I've loved forever. Played another grand final. Ended up marrying the girl who I was recently dating when we left. Got kids. I'd replace premierships for kids and a wife and happiness. So that's what I'd say.
It sounds like you did make the right choice. Of course, you played against Hawthorn in the 2015 grand final. You were playing for West Coast at the time. What was it like to play against your old side in a grand final?
I thought we were going to turn up and beat them. I was that confident because we played them in the first final over at Subi and smashed them. Absolutely smashed them. And they had a few things going on at the time. Hodgie had been done for having a couple of beers at a poker game. People calling for him to be stood down. They came over and we walloped them without Matt Prittis, who won the Brownlow the year before. He was a late withdrawal. And we just thought that the brand of footy we were playing was perfect. And we made short work of up to quarter time of North Melbourne. We're in red hot form, but turning up MCG. And it's funny speaking to guys like Hodgie and that. They're like, once we got you on the MCG, we weren't losing. So, we were probably a goal or two away from being extremely embarrassed on the MCG. We were embarrassed, but, what Richmond did to the Giants is embarrassing. We're probably not in that boat, but, we just played a shocking game. We just played a horrible, horrible game, and they won the flag and missed opportunity.
It would have been a really strange feeling for you. And, of course, that game was also hot as well. I remember watching that game on the TV, and it was about 30 degrees in Melbourne, which would have made it even more difficult for you, even though you were from Perth.
Yeah, no, the heat's one of those ones where, say for example, the cold. When you go to Tassie, I remember we played Brisbane one day, and they had a rule you weren't allowed to mention the cold. Not allowed to mention it. Well, if you mention it or you don't mention it, it's not going to help you get a tick. It's bloody cold. If you want to say it's bloody cold, it's cold. You can't fix it. It's a bit like that with the heat. You're as fit as you can be. It is hot, but when you're out there, the adrenaline and stuff, you sort of forget about how hot it is, I guess. In 2008, I thought was really hot, but that was just a fast game. Whereas 2015, you probably noticed it a little bit more than an overcast 18, but as I said, once that ball goes down, you don't even think about it.
Now, of course, you had the opportunity to commentate with Triple M in the 2021 grand final at Optus Stadium in Perth. What was that opportunity like for you to commentate alongside probably one of the greatest commentators of all time in Dennis Cometti?
Yeah, I'll correct you there. I think he is the greatest, Dennis. I absolutely, no, in my opinion, no one can match the great Dennis Cometti. Mate, I'm really fortunate that my wife, granddad over here in WA, is somewhat of a footy legend. So the older era know who he is, and that's often my in with people like Dennis Cometti. They always want to know how John O'Connell's going. So when I first moved over, I met Dennis a couple of times, and he knew my wife's granddad and all this sort of stuff. So whenever I spoke to him, it was always just about the granddad, but I was always nervous and absolutely in awe of Dennis Cometti. I've been on breakfast radio now for 5 years over here, maybe 6 years. And Dennis was coming in all last year, once a week. So I'd sit with him once a week and just talk, absolutely dribble. We'd do a game of footy every weekend together and talk. He must look at us and think we're absolute clowns. But he was a friendly, kind. I'm going to miss him. No, he was a special person to be able to work with and to be with him to do his last game. So the alternative commentator, Lockie Reed, is a mad Melbourne supporter. They hadn't seen a Melbourne Premiership. Dennis Cometti called, 40 grand final. How many grand finals he's called? God knows how many. But he had a minute to go in the game, and I wanted to sit back and watch Dennis finish his career and call the Melbourne Grand Final. But the kind of person he is, he took a back seat and let Lockie Reed, who's ridden the emotion of the Melbourne Football Club, call out the finishing touches of the game. And Lockie's a spectacular caller himself. So nothing was obviously lost there, but just in his own mind, he's just thinking of others all the time. And, I hopefully see him a bit more around town, but, going to miss him.
He definitely is one of the greatest commentators in the AFL. Of course,
who's your favourite commentator of all time, please?
Look, it's tight between Bruce McAvaney and Dennis. I do love Dennis. So, of course, you were able to commentate that grand final last year. It was a night grand final. Do you think that going forward, the grand final should be held during the day or at night?
Daytime. That's some traditional daytime, 2 o'clock, 2:10, whatever time. Bounce down and away you go. Oh, but the night, the lights were cool. But if I wanted to see a light show, I'd go to the city of Perth today on Australia Day and watch the fireworks. I mean, yeah, it's cool, but I'm there to watch the footy. And I'm not there to watch the entertainment. It's an added tick, but the big tick, 99% of the reason why I'm at the MCG is to watch the grand final, the footy, and 2 o'clock is the time slot for me. Even, for example, the halftime entertainment, none of the lights worked at Optus Stadium. They all, the Wi-Fi got too many people on the Wi-Fi system, so the bloody light sticks weren't working. So, give me a 2 o'clock every day of the week. Might be the unpopular opinion, but that's where I sit. What do you think?
I also agree with you. I think it should be at the day grand final. Of course, the past 2 seasons have been COVID impacted and the grand finals were held at night, but I agree with you. I'm a traditionalist as well. Of course, you work with Basil Zemplis on breakfast radio in Perth, 92.9 FM. What was Basil's thoughts to the grand final being held in Perth as the Lord Mayor?
Oh, mate, they loved it. I think, like all politicians, mate, they're bringing people to the city. Fantastic. Basil works his ass off. Does get whacked from time to time on social media by people, but he's putting his head down and he's having a red hot go. So he absolutely loved it. But I mean, politicians around anything that's like that. Mark McGowan had the Premiership Cup. I don't even know if he knows he's played a hold of football. So they insert themselves into any opportunity, politicians. But no, Baz, working with Baz, he works his ass off. There's no harder working person in Perth. There simply isn't. Works hard and gets results from working hard. He's done Channel 7 News for over 30 years, breakfast radio for decades, and now the Lord Mayor. I think that people, it's easy to take pot shots at someone who's having a crack.
Now, did you always want to work in the media post your AFL playing days?
No, mate. I was desperate to stay in footy, to be honest with you. I was really keen to stay in footy and probably am keen to U-turn back into footy. I bloody love it. I watch every single game of footy on the weekends. I feel like I'm going to talk about it over here in WA. I do 2 podcasts, do sports reports twice a day on the Triple M. I write an article and I do a separate podcast. Then I need to be across it all. So I still watch every single game. People say, how do you possibly do that? I've got 2 young kids. So when one wakes up at 5 a.m., we sit out here and I feed the little fella and I watch the footy or something like that. So I love it. I'm so lucky to be able to work in it still with the media side of things over here in Perth. But I love helping and developing. So as much as I love radio, am I going to be in radio for 20 years? Absolutely not. Is it what I see myself doing in the short-term future? Absolutely. So, one day and I think it's important too. Some coaches, they really just do footy for 20, 30, 40 years. As much as it is a little bit different, doing breakfast radio and talking about Katy Perry and, stuff like that, that's not really up my, awards nights and that sort of stuff. But it gives you a different aspect of life and being out there doing a different job. So, yeah, I'd love to circle back to AFL at some stage.
Now, just finally, what are your hobbies outside of football and your media commitments? How do you break away from that bubble?
Yeah, mate, I've got 2 kids, and I've mentioned a couple of times. With breakfast radio, I'm there at 5 a.m. Start at 4:15. There at 5, done by 9:30. Obviously got a few little things to tie up. So I take the kids every afternoon during the week pretty much. So Tuesday, Thursdays is my latest pickup, and that's about 2:30. But the other ones are 11 till, 6 o'clock when the wife gets home. So in terms of hobbies, I love, and I try and do things with the kids differently. So whether it's a swimming pool, a jumping castle, shop, put them to the races on Monday. I just try and do different things with them. So that's a hobby. But in terms of, everyone needs to break away from their family as well. I'm lucky that I've got a tight group of mates over here still. And as I said, when I thought about leaving Hawthorn on the West Coast, the mateships are probably a bit different in terms of the stage of your life. Hawthorn, you're young, you're out looking to meet a girl, go to a nightclub, drink some beers, play footy and repeat. Bit older, weddings, kids, christenings, kids' birthday parties, just the relationships are a bit thicker. So got a really good relationship, a friendship group over here. But hobbies, I just love catching up with the boys, to be honest with you. I just love it. And I'm desperate to get back into golf. I was shocking at golf. Chance Payman was an absolute gun, and he used to be my golf partner. So I was a shocker. Sanger was unbelievable. And he'd spend 70% of the time looking for my golf ball. But it's an addictive game, golf. And I think if I could lay a goal out for you now, Fletch, I'd love to have a membership at a golf course in Perth and be able to play golf twice a week. I think footy season I work 7 days a week. So I do the Waffle and the AFL as well. So it's a bit harder to squeeze rounds in, but I'd love to be able to find in 2 years' time that I've worked on the handicap. Because it's also good for you being outside. Alternatively, with so many computers, I'm speaking to you on Zoom at the moment. I've got bloody earphones in. I've got my phone sitting next to me. I've got a microphone and work technology sitting here. I've got a big speaker there. There's a lot of technology floating around. So golf, you've got to stick to a ball and you make your way around the course.
Yeah, definitely. Does sound like great fun for you. Thank you very much, Xavier Ellis, for joining me on the podcast today. It's been great to talk to you.
Thanks, mate. Pleasure coming on, mate. And you've done a really thorough job researching and organising with your times. And you just have to keep swinging to the fences and get guests on, mate. You've done a great job. And good luck to the Blue Jackets. Where are they going to finish this year?
Hopefully they'll finish in the top 8.
Okay. Well, hopefully Paddy Sips is not at West Coast next year.
Hopefully not.
Good on you, mate. All the best. And keep looking after Sarah Walsh. He's a bloody superstar.
That he is. Thank you very much, Xavier Ellis. But also I just wanted to say a massive thank you to the listeners of the podcast. I hope that you enjoyed this podcast. But for now, stay tuned for the next episode and goodbye for now.